Welcome back to another video. As you can see by the title of this video, that my motor is back. It's actually been back for about 3 months or so. I just haven't really had time to get into it. Jamie Swift at Swifty's Race Engines reassembled it all for me. If you don't remember or you're not familiar, the head went to Sydney and got a bit of a spruce up. There was a few marks on the buckets when we pulled it apart to change the valve springs to turn the boost up. So the head ended up going to Sydney to get checked. While it was there, it sort of steamrolled a little bit, but I went shimless. New arrow valves and buckets, all DLC coated, reassembled by Rams in Sydney. While the head was away and the motor was just sitting, I pulled the motor out and disassembled it. It went over to Kulig Engineering and got a block brace, billet main caps, and everything like that. Once I got it all back, I sent it over to Jamie Swift. He was great, he helped me. He reassembled the whole motor. So like I said, it has been sitting for a few months. It is here now. It was all wrapped up and the sump was on it for transport. But since then, Matt and I have resealed and fixed the sump. The sump's on there to stay, and we've put on the boost stock full length baffle covers. I really like these ones because they sit inside the head. There's not a lot of room for the oil to sort of come out. Just trying to minimize losing and breathing as much oil as possible, trying to keep it in the head with the head drain. So yeah, they're on there to stay. Got all my intake and everything all vapor honed or vapor blasted, ready to go back together. I got titanium stud kit from Kudos Motorsport. I got the exhaust kit as well. So titanium studs, titanium bolts and everything for that. So Matt should be coming over today and hopefully give me a hand with the reassembling the throttle bodies. But as you can see, I've got a whole lot of stuff vapor honed and it's sort of come up new. So that's the AC bracket. Throttle bodies are in here as well. So these are all going to get fully rebuilt, new seals, new goo, etc. But super excited to get them on. I really want to get my turbo and manifold back on. One thing I haven't spoken about or taken any photos of or posted any photos of is my valve covers. So they are Bayside blue, trying to replicate the Tomei blue as much as possible, but keeping it like matching OEM Nissan. So this is R34 Bayside blue. They've been painted for quite a while and I'm super excited about these to get these on. And then we modified the 6 to make it an 8. I'll put a photo on the screen of how I did that. Basically made a little bracket, had Fletcher TIG weld it, sanded it flat, and then this was all painted. Like I said, throttle body's got vapor blasted and stuff, so they were fully disassembled. So I've got all the old bits here for that. But Kudos Motorsport hooked us up once again. Brand new springs, got rebuild kits, the Remax seals and everything that you need. So there's a whole rebuild kit for the throttle bodies. So hopefully that can all get done in this video as well. The old high octane baffles out of the rocker covers were getting a bit sad, so I got brand new ones of them to go in. Put all that back together. Got a new intake gasket, throttle body gaskets and stuff in there as well. So super excited. I really want to get this thing sort of all ready to drop in the car. Want to get all the exhaust and intake back on, get the rocker covers on, see what it's going to look like in its final form, and it can sit here sort of while the car's sitting. So obviously the car's all painted, you guys would have seen that. We're in between coats at the moment, so it's still got to go back to work for the flow coat. So really hoping to get this assembled. It can sit once the car's back from flow coat, obviously start putting the engine bay back together, rerun the wiring, put all the boosters and whatnot in. This will go in sort of last thing. I don't really want to be working around the engine, get the engine bay exactly how I want it and then drop the motor in. But yeah, really excited to dive into the motor in this video. Start getting all the bolt-ons and things back on. So obviously engine brackets go back on, got the PRP, AC bracket, relocation, just get all the little bits and bobs on. Get all the accessories back on and just have this thing sitting like I just said. But super excited to get it all together, get the covers on, see what it's going to look like. Let's go. Alright, so got the inside of the rocker cover all cleaned up last time. Just cleaned up the baffle to go back in. Pushed that down as much as possible. Got to put a little bit of sealer on this top edge in here. This one I'll push in. I was just making sure I had the right side where I needed it, and that goes down and will sit in like that. Got new hardware, so I'll get these open. Might have to hold my mouth right as I sort of push this down and try and get a couple of these started. But that is essentially what it's going to look like. We'll get this one in and then we'll do the other one. Alright, so first one's done. So the install instructions say to do a small bead of silicone down each side, push the baffles down. This stud was already broken, but a little bit of blue Loctite, all the bolts are in, and I've just nipped them all up sort of in sequence, just middle, front to back, and then ease my way back through, but they're all quite firm now, so I'll leave them in. So that one's done. I'll clean up and we'll do this one, and then obviously they can go on the motor. Alright, now the baffles are in, I want to get them over on the motor. I'm going to put a little bit of that sealer in the corners and across the back of the cam caps. It's what I've done previously on my RB25s, because I know the half moons, or the factory rubber ones, are sort of notorious for leaking, and this is a bit of an odd shaped corner to seal. So it's what I've done in the past. I don't know if other people do it, but we'll just do a little bit of sealer there and in there, and then we'll get the covers on. I'm going to use the same sealer to do that. I think this one's JB World. My other one was Loctite. It's just oil resistant sealer. I'm definitely not a mechanic. I'm not saying this is the right way to do it. Just doing sort of what I know to put it back together. Hopefully it's right, hopefully it works. But we'll get these on, and then we'll be able to start to see what it looks like. So, blob of sealer in the corner of all the caps, little dabs across the back, so that way when the rocker cover goes on, it seals on these awkward corners and across the back of those half moons. So let's get the covers on. Alright, timing cover on, starting to take shape. I can't find my shiny new dress-up bolts, so I've just got the OEM bolts back in there for now, but I've got a new one down in here. So for the purpose of this exercise, that'll be fine, I'll leave them in. Spark plugs are already in, they can stay in now, so I'll put the coil packs in, and then we'll put the coil pack cover on. Alright, before I put the timing cover on, R35 GTR coils are back in. It's a Kulig Engineering bracket, genuine R35 coils. So I just put them in, they're all nipped up tight, they don't need to come back out now. I might sit the loom in, and if it's not going to hang too much out the back, I might leave it in. But I want to put the cover on to see what it's going to look like. Maybe even sit my trigger kit in before we start on the accessories. Alright, wow, absolutely stoked with that. That looks sick. Starting to take shape, that's for sure. Alright, I might put these titanium studs in the exhaust. I've got these titanium studs. I'm just going to clean up a little bit more on my gasket. I got some more copper goo. I don't really like using goo to seal exhausts and stuff, but I'll just do a thin bead around the exhaust holes ever so gently, each side of the gasket, just to sort of give it a little bit more of a seal. When the turbo and the manifold are on and it's in the car, it's extremely hard to work on, being a big single with like a Pro Mod manifold. So I'd rather get this manifold on, get the turbo on now, get it all tight, and obviously it's going to sit for a while before it goes back in the car anyway. So I'll get these studs in. If you've never seen exhaust studs before, obviously they're just basically little bolts, but the titanium ones have the Allen key in the end. So you just gently sort of get them all started and then nip them up with an Allen key the whole way through. And then I'll do the seal of the gasket and we'll get the turbo manifold on. So let's jump in. I'll get all these studs in. Alright, might have been a bit hard to see. Basically trying to keep the razor blade as 90 degrees to the manifold as possible and straight scrape across the surface. That sort of just takes anything off the top without digging in. Any little bits of old gasket in holes, try and get out as well, just so it doesn't interfere when we put it back on, as best as possible. Get this little bit out. I'll have to get that in a minute, but I'm trying to keep it as clean as possible. Just wiped it over with brake cleaner. I was trying to stop as much going into the manifold as possible. I mean, it's exhaust, it probably doesn't matter. It's probably just going to melt and shoot out the back anyway. But just trying to keep it clean. So I'll get a nice little prep sole wipe on here. And then I'll put some copper gasket on I'll do it on the motor, and I'll probably do it on the manifold. Slide the gaskets on, slide it on, and then we've still got the new hardware to go in, and we'll get that nipped up. So let's get this manifold on, and then we can see what the motor looks like with the turbo on it. Turbo's on. Turbo's back on for the first time in probably like 21 months. So a bit over a year and a half, not quite 2 whole years yet. That's how long this thing's been pulled apart. So the turbo and the head originally came off in the car, and then the bottom end sat in the car for a few months before I decided to pull that out and do the block brace. So first time seeing this back together for nearly 2 years. So very cool. Front housing's over there on the table. I might sit that on soon. I just can't remember the orientation without putting it in the car with the cooler pipes, so I might even leave it like that. I might keep going with some of the other accessories. to get the alternator on, maybe get the engine brackets on. I do really want to start on the throttle bodies and the intake, but I'm going to wait for my mate Matt to come over and give me a hand with that. I've never rebuilt the throttle bodies before. I'm not sure if he has. I'd feel a bit more comfortable doing it with him, doing some research and taking our time doing that. In the meantime, while I feel like I'm on a bit of a roll, keep going with the bolt-on accessories, maybe even put the fan hub on, start making this thing look a little bit more complete just while it sits. Might even dig my trigger kit out and just dummy sit that. Have a sneaky look at what it's going to look like with the trigger kit on it, but I might keep tinkering, see how far we get today. Alright, got as much on the motor as I can for the moment. Most of the accessories are all there and just loose. This is the Frenchie's high performance high output LS alternator, I think. That's why it's got those different brackets on that side. Power steering bracket here, ready to go on. I was thinking about rebuilding that now and getting that put on today, but looking at all the rest of everything else, I might get this vapor honed or vapor blasted before I rebuild it, so it's all nice and clean. So I'm just getting everything out of the box, and I might do another run of vapor hone. Waiting on Matt to help me with the throttle bodies, so I might get this all cleaned up, get the intake all cleaned up, and the coolant runner resealed back on. I can use the titanium hardware and get this bolted onto the engine today, use the stud remover tool, get these studs out, and then it's one more piece on the motor. So I might jump into that. I'll fire up the compressor, give this a good clean off and a blow off, and then start assembling this. Alright, so all cleaned up on this coolant runner, all cleaned up on the bottom of the intake manifold. So I'll run some goo around it. We'll get this on with the new gasket, and then I can remove these studs. Alright, all made it together, just nipped it up tight. I can't imagine this has to be too tight, it's quite firm, and the sealer will seal it, it's only for coolant. So we'll get this tape off. This has just been keeping any and all dust out until the time came that I was ready to do this. So I'll get some brake cleaner, I'll give that a bit of a wipe over just to make sure the surface is clean. I'll give the back of this another wipe over just to be sure. But we'll get the new gasket, set the gasket on, and then we've got the hardware. Get the new hardware out. Obviously it'll be some of these long ones and the short ones. I presume all the studs will replace those. So we'll get these out. We'll start setting this on. So that intake runner's on now with all the titanium hardware. So I'm going to get these studs out. Obviously you can put two nuts on it and wind it back. But I bought one of these a little while ago, stud extractor. Just tighten it up, wind it up. Honestly, game changer. You do it so much quicker. So much quicker with a stud extractor. They're not expensive. I mean, you can get expensive ones. This is just a cheap one. We used it on the sump to get the studs out because I had to put longer bolts in for the block brace. But yeah, stud extractor, whip these out in no time, and then we'll put the titanium ones in. Now that the intake's on, it's all taped up, just keep dust out of it. I've also sat my trigger kit in, just sitting there to sort of see what it's going to look like. I'll tidy this all up and run all the wires, put a plug on it when I get a minute. But now that's done, I want to do the power steering pump. So I did go and get this vapor blasted, or vapor cleaned, vapor honed, whatever you want to call it. So like I said before, I've got the Six Engineering rear high cast pump delete. So basically we'll pull this all apart, we'll remove the second half, and got the new machined backing to replace the back of it. So basically we're going to convert this from a dual pump to a single, and then there's an AN fitting to go on the top. So that's fine, I'll just have to make a new line to go to my reservoir. But yeah, I had this vapor hone, so it's all clean, ready to go. So essentially once I put it all back together, it's clean, it's new, it's on to stay. So I want to dive in and get this done. So I'll set the camera up and I'm going to blow this apart and get this all changed over. So then we can get this on the motor. I've also had some bolts all zinc plated and stuff, my adjuster for my AC. So I want to get my AC on as well and get this side sort of all dummied up. So let's dive in. I want to get this pump built. Alright, so power steering pump all rebuilt and on. So obviously we've removed the rear half for the high cast, all on. While it was all away, I had some bolts and the little adjusters and stuff all zinc plated. I've also fitted the trigger kit in the meantime. But yeah, I got a lot of bolts and stuff zinc plated. The adjuster, this has been vapor blasted as well for the aircon compressor. And then all my linkages and stuff for when we put the throttle bodies back together. Zinc plated the AC pulley, but I was going to paint, but then I painted the front black. That is a brand new bearing, so you can buy these assemblies brand new, I think with the adjuster, for about $200. This bearing was $10 from a bearing shop. So I've just pressed that in at work, etc, etc. We'll get this all back together, get this on, but I need to fit the PRP relocation brackets first. So these go down the bottom and move the pump forward, I believe, however far, so it runs one belt, so it doesn't throw belts, etc. So we'll get this all back together and then we'll get this on. Alright, AC's on now, so I never had an AC pump originally, so this is a second hand one, hence why it looks a little bit dirty, but I'll give it a bit of a clean up before it goes before it goes in the car. So AC all on, power steering pump rebuilt, that's all on. As you can see, I put this trigger kit on, this cherry sensor in the trigger kit, mounted it the other day, so I might quickly put the other one on. So I've got another brand new cherry sensor from Kulig Motorsport, and when Jamie Swift assembled the engine, he's modified a little window in the side of the oil pump, which is very hard to see in there, and fitted this bracket. So this cherry sensor is going to go in there. We're going to wind it all the way in until it touches the tooth. So when it touches the tooth, you then wind it one full rotation back, and that is about 1 mil, or however much of an inch, which is what recommended for the cherry sensor. So we'll quickly put this one in there now. Alright, and that's nipped up tight now. So that's on there to stay. So there's the lower cherry sensor in there. Take the light out of there. It's just hidden behind the balancer on that little bracket. So then obviously this wiring will probably run up behind the alternator into the alternator loom, from the cams, come across the front and meet in here as well. We've got to repin them to the factory cast plug. We'll probably hide it under the manifold. But for the most part, that's probably it for this video. Achieved what I wanted to achieve, and it was to sit most of the motor together. Basically waiting to go back in the car. So while the car's still sitting, I can start on the engine bay, I can start on the wiring. I need to rerun things through the boot, put the floor panel in, etc. But the motor can sit, probably wrap it back up, cover it, can sit over beside my wheels and wait to go back in. Still waiting on the throttle bodies. I do have new bearings. Matt's got them, they're all getting cleaned. I'm going to reassemble them, and then obviously I can put them on at another time, put the intake on. But for the most part, this is together. This is what I was trying to achieve, and I'm super, super stoked. I was always curious what it was going to look like with the 8. The covers have been painted for a while as well, and now it's all sitting together, starting to take shape. So thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.